This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Wake County Democratic Party Chair and political analyst Dan Blue III, John Hood from the John Locke Foundation, Becki Gray from the Carolina Journal, also a political analyst, and Peg O'Connell, political analyst and lobbyist also, we might add. Well, we've got a really interesting show planned for you this week. We're going to begin by talking about the 3 tax reform plans now on the table. We'll discuss economic development plan proposed by Governor McCrory, and we'll talk about the U.S. Senate race that's beginning to take shape. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Legislative leaders apparently are going to fulfill one of their goals for this session, reforming North Carolina's tax codes. The question is how dramatic the reforms might be. We have 2 Senate versions proposed and 1 House plan. The most drastic change would come from the Senate's Rucho plan. The least dramatic change would come from the House plan, and the Clodfelter-Hartzell plan in the Senate strikes sort of a middle ground. We want our panel to compare and contrast them, talk about how they're going to impact our state, and predict what's going to end up by happening. John, why 3 plans? And we can understand the House having their version of a tax reform plan. Why 2 Senate plans, especially when we're told that Senate President Pro Tem Berger seems to be favoring the Rucho plan?
Well, it's fair to call the Rucho plan the Senate plan, actually, because it's led by most of the leaders of the Senate appear to be endorsing that plan. Now, the Clodfelter-Hartzell legislation, a couple of reasons why that was filed. First of all, a version of that legislation has been filed before. Dan Clodfelter, Democrat from Mecklenburg County, Fletcher Hartzell, Republican from Cabarrus County. I think they have, or certainly Clodfelter has filed most of those ideas in the past. It's just something he's been working on for years. But also they went ahead and filed a bill so there'd be a bill to work on in case it took a while. And actually what you call the Rucho plan, the subsequent Senate bill, did take a while to get filed.
Yes.
But at this point, really what you have are the 2 contrasting plans, one from the Senate leadership and one from the House.
Hey, you're over there at the legislature quite a bit. I think the big question a lot of people are wondering is, both houses obviously are working on budgets, which are due by the end of June to start the new fiscal year. So the question is, are these tax reform plans going to be rolled into the budget, or are they going to be voted on separately?
Well, that's a very good question. And you see in the Senate a lot of tax policy that's part of their budget proposal. And we will see very soon all the details that come out in the House budget. And I think you'll see some tax policy language in that as well. But right now they're separate, and I think they're trying to keep them sufficiently separate so people can actually analyze what's in both.
We had some interesting developments, Becki, that took place in the House. The House put theirs in committee and took it to the Finance Committee on Tuesday.
Tax reform is not for the faint of heart.
No, it is not. And Representative Julia Howard amended the tax reform proposal to eliminate the cap on mortgage interest rates deductions. Then it was taken over to the Appropriations Committee the next day, where Chair Nelson Dollar sort of had his hat handed to him very quickly. He couldn't even get it voted favorably in order to be able to put it on the floor. What in the world was going on in here?
Well, Representative Julia Howard, Republican from Davie County, has been in the General Assembly for years, is also a realtor and an appraiser. And so she has carried the water for the North Carolina Real Estate Realtors Association for a number of years. She has an interest in this, as do many other members. She was able to get an amendment put out that put the mortgage deduction all of it back into the budget. What happened then in the Appropriations Committee is there was a PCS that took it back out.
Explain what that is.
A proposed committee substitute that is presented to the committee as a substitute bill, changes in it, and usually it's accepted and the committee debates it and then they either vote it in or vote it out. So it was very unusual for a number of reasons, and I think totally unexpected, at least from Representative Nelson Dollar's reaction to it. The PCS was
Speaker Tillis's reaction to it also.
And David Lewis, who has been running the tax reform package in the House. I think it was a surprise to everyone that the proposed committee substitute was presented to the committee, and put before the committee, and the committee voted for, I believe it was 44 to 33, 34, not to accept that proposed committee substitute. Nope, it was over.
Dan, the question a lot of people are asking is, where's Governor McCrory in all of this? Now, he said earlier he wasn't going to put his own tax reform plan together. It's been rumored that he favors more of what the House is advocating in tax reform than he does the Rucho plan anyway. Is he going to be the power broker here? Is he the mediator, the compromiser, or is he just going to watch what happens?
I think he's playing it smart right now and watching to see where it's leading. There's still a couple of issues that they've got to sort out amongst themselves, and he's got the benefit right now of pointing in a general direction without having to get down into the weeds, and that's what tax reform is basically about.
Getting down into the weeds. We'll talk about it more in just a minute. Don't forget, you can always watch NC Spin anytime you want to by visiting our website, ncspin.com, and clicking on the YouTube button on the right-hand side of the page. We post each week's show on Friday, so don't forget to sign up also to receive our free weekly email newsletter called Spin Cycle. You can subscribe on the website there, too. Get comments from your panelists and readers at our website or ncspin.com on Facebook. Let's keep talking. After the break, more tax reform.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Our farmers are among the most productive in the world, even while lacking a stable and reliable agriculture workforce. But the workforce problems in agriculture have reached a breaking point, and food demand continues to rise. Reforms to the immigration system can ensure that farmers have access to the workers they need. The good news is that we still have time to fix this corrosive problem. Tell your congressional representatives that we need comprehensive immigration reform in 2013.
The North Carolina Medical Society is committed to a healthier North Carolina. We feel, as an organization representing over 14,000 physicians, that we have a responsibility and an obligation to help our citizens become more healthy. And by doing this, we want to help educate them about ways in which they need to keep themselves healthy through good nutrition, exercise, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. These ingredients will help not only individual citizens become and maintain a healthier outlook on their lives, but also help contribute to having a healthier state.
Resident lenders of North Carolina are licensed providers of safe and responsible financial services. Existing regulations limit consumer choice. It's time to modernize consumer finance laws. Learn more at responsibleloansnc.com.
Tax reform. It's a popular phrase around Raleigh. But watch out, because middle-class families will pay more. The Senate plan creates over 170 new taxes that will increase prices on all goods and services. It even taxes medicine and Social Security benefits. And it eliminates the home mortgage interest and property tax deductions, reducing home values and hurting the economy. Tax reform should not make middle-class families pay more.
We now return to NC Spin.
All right, we want to continue our discussions on the tax reform plans and getting into specifics. Perhaps the most significant difference comes in sales taxes and the application of sales taxes to services. The current sales tax rate for the state is 4.75%. Most local governments impose another 2% for a 6.75% total sales tax rate. Now, the House plan would keep the state rate the same, but lower the local portion of sales tax by 0.1%. The Rucho plan would lower the overall rate to 6.5%. The state rate, however, would go up to 5%, and the local rate would be dropped down to 1.5%. And Clodfelter's plan takes it to 6.5%, but keeps local taxes the same. And then they broaden it with the tax base with lots of additional services. Why such differences here, and who's going to prevail on this?
Well, there was a significant difference here about how much should industries that are currently not collecting sales tax at all have to be brought into that game. So the Senate's argument was if it's taxed anywhere in the country, let's go ahead and try to move it in. So that's 130 or so services and goods that are currently untaxed. That dramatically expands the sales tax base and allows you to do more rate reduction in sales or income. In the case of the Senate plan, they actually used most of that revenue to then pull the income tax rate down to 4.5%. The House decided not to impose the burden on all these industries that don't currently collect the tax. They expanded the base only in situations, almost only in situations where a business already collects sales tax, let's say on a computer, but not on the warranty or the service contract on the computer. And so since those businesses are already set up to collect sales tax, it's not an undue burden. It was the idea on the House side.
Dan, one of the things that the Rucho plan in the Senate does is it imposes sales tax on prescription medications and also raises the sales tax on food up to the highest state sales tax rate. Is this going to fly?
I hope not. I don't think it is. And part of that is you've got a lot of constituencies that for the first time are going to either see their services taxed or goods like prescription medications taxed. And that's not going to be very popular. In the end, you're going to have to go through with a much more granular sort of almost a scalpel and surgically figure out who can bear it and who can't.
Well, Becki, that's the big rap that people have with a lot of the Senate plan is the fact that for the average middle income and lower income individual, they're going to end up paying more taxes than they currently pay.
Right. They put out on their website, there's a tax calculator that you can go to, and it didn't take long for a lot of people to figure out that low to middle income families are going to be paying more under this, and that's been a real problem for this plan. That and the fact that increasing the sales tax again to 130 services that have never paid tax before, and then charging tax on food, medicine, and Social Security benefits. That there's been a lot in the press about that.
Peg, the Rucho plan calls for personal and corporate income tax rate reduction. All of them call for personal income and corporate income tax rate reductions. What's the differences between the two? I mean, it looks like they're almost splitting hairs to some extent. Income tax rates would drop from a high of 7.75% to 5.5% in the Rucho plan, lowered maximum over a period of years to 4.5%. The House plan calls for 5.9%. Is this a big deal with people?
Well, you know, I think that for the people who've authored these pieces of legislation, it's a very big deal. There is a philosophical commitment that if you reduce these personal income taxes and these corporate income taxes, that rich people with lots of businesses are going to run into North Carolina, the economy will boom and everybody will live happily ever after. But they're nibbling around the edges, and I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, especially when you start to take the things that have made North Carolina good by taking all the money away from them. I don't think that's going to improve things at all.
John, one of the things that's going to happen for sure is that regardless of which plan gets implemented, well, I take that back. The Clodfelter plan actually would generate more revenues to the state of North Carolina, but the House plan would see revenues drop by about $350 million a year. The Rucho plan by $700 million over the next 2 years. What does this say about what's got to happen in the budget? They got to reduce spending?
Yes, the Senate budget actually accounted for that. I assume the House budget will account for tax reduction. Actually, unless you have a net tax cut, you have regressivity. Of course, the Senate plan has some regressivity, even though it's a net tax cut. But if you don't make it a net tax cut, then it's very difficult to do tax reform in a way that doesn't make a lot of people worse off. The House plan, unlike the Senate plan, doesn't impose higher taxes on people of lower to moderate incomes. In fact, the Fiscal Research Division put out numbers this week showing that about 80% of households in North Carolina will pay less tax under the House plan. That's one advantage it has right now over the Senate plan.
Peg, one of the things that I think that as we compare and contrast this is what's going to happen to nonprofits, specifically hospitals, colleges, churches, nonprofit organizations. The Senate plan talks about, well, both plans talk to some extent about doing away with the sales tax exemptions. They're getting a lot of pushback on that.
Well, and just in full disclosure, I'm on the board of 5 nonprofits, and all my clients are nonprofits, so I have a dog in this fight. But I think it's, you know, this legislature constantly talks about jobs, 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 and the nonprofit sector in this state provides a huge number of jobs. So why you would want to immediately suck all this money out of the nonprofit economy, saying you're trying to jumpstart the economy, doesn't make any sense to me. And in all honesty, to take money from the nonprofits, until just this week, there was a cap on the charitable contributions, the deduction for charitable contributions.
And the home mortgage rate,
I mean,
the film,
Becki talked
$25,000.
And that's
it's
a
pretty
lot,
high.
but still, I mean, mean, it's tax
You
policy.
got to have a pretty big mortgage to be paying $25,000 in interest.
But it's still, it's a message to nonprofits that you're not important enough to the economy.
But Dan, they're still playing around with these tax preferences and exclusions and exceptions because they're talking about continuing the tax preferences they give the film industry.
Sure.
How do they justify that?
You can't justify it. I mean, in the end, you're going to, if you try to treat everyone the same way, you're going to find that there are certain people that are more impacted by the taxes. If you try to treat the industries the same way, you're going to start playing favorites. It's inconsistent. It's difficult to manage.
Well, this is all taking shape, and I'm sure that in the next week or so, we're going to have more definitive information to be able to talk about this. When we come back after these messages, we're going to talk about selling North Carolina.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
What will happen if government keeps cutting funding to our community hospitals? How will it affect you and your family? I'm Laura Easton, a registered nurse and CEO of Caldwell Memorial Hospital. While my coworkers and I continue to focus on our mission of delivering quality health care, government funding cuts are hurting hospitals' ability to care for our patients. Nearly 2/3 of all hospital patients are on government programs that pay hospitals less than the actual cost of care. With continuing government cuts, community hospitals may be forced to cut critical services, like emergency rooms and delivering babies, or even close their doors. If we want healthy communities, we must have healthy hospitals that are financially strong. Please call your legislators today. Ask them to protect your community hospital from painful budget cuts.
Resident lenders of North Carolina are licensed providers of safe and responsible financial services. Existing regulations limit consumer choice. It's time to modernize consumer finance laws. Learn more at ResponsibleLoansNC.com.
It's true. Farming is different than it was 50 years ago. We know consumers have questions about how our food is grown today. North Carolina livestock farmers want you to know that they're using the most responsible and caring farming practices to feed our state.
NCAnimalAg.com.
There's a new day dawning for our state. A fresh crop of leaders are bringing conservative reform. Gone are the days of billion-dollar deficits and the threat of Obamacare minimized. Now they're working to get our economy on track by holding the line on spending, cutting taxes, passing tax reform that's smart and fair. Let's get back in the game, North Carolina. Encourage our new leaders to keep going.
We now return to NC Spin.
Commerce Secretary Sharon Decker has been traveling the state explaining the new economic development plan Governor McCrory announced, a plan Decker says will get our economy moving again. As you look at the history of North Carolina, our core has been agribusiness, manufacturing, small business, and entrepreneurship, she says. In this plan, we'll go back to our core. And that's primarily how we'll get out of this fiscal situation, by focusing on what we know and know well. A new branding campaign will help sell the state, while the private partnerships will replace the regional economic development partnerships and promote tourism, travel, international trade development, and bring into many functions now performed by the Rural Center and the NC Biotechnology Center into these partnerships. Becki, there's still a lot of details that we don't know about this reform. But we're told it's much like the public-private plan that's used by the state of Indiana. What's your assessment of what we know about it? And will it indeed move the needle on reducing unemployment?
Well, I hope so. We certainly need it to. You know, here in North Carolina, we have not seen a net job increase since 2008. We have the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country. We've got to do something to get this economy moving, to create jobs, to get people back to work, to get businesses here. And Secretary Decker has certainly taken her job very seriously. She inherited a mess. She inherited a very disjointed effort one of the first things she did when she presented to the General Assembly a week or so ago was presented a set of org charts to them to reorganize the Department of Commerce. What I believe she is trying to do, what she has said she is trying to do, is to streamline things, to get rid of duplication of services, to make the department much more nimble so that it can be responsive to businesses that are coming in here with a focus on not only getting new businesses to come here to North Carolina, but also to take care of the businesses that are here. One thing that we've heard a lot comparing our system to, say, Georgia or Texas that have been pretty successful with things, is one of the problems here in North Carolina is it takes a long time to put the deals together. And if you're a business, you know, time is money. And so just to be able to be more responsive to those and to coordinate the efforts that we have across the state is something that she is really trying to move this towards.
Sharon Decker is just an incredible personality. You can't be around this woman for very long without just becoming a huge fan of hers. But she makes the case that what we've been doing has not been working, and that she wants to put a lot of faith in this private partnership. Is she right to be looking this way?
I think that's a good question. And first of all, I'm a little disappointed that I haven't heard more from her about the role of education in our economic development piece. But in terms of the public-private partnership, particularly the model that Indiana has used, it hasn't gone without its critics. There have been complaints about its transparency and actually being able to track the number of jobs that it's created. I'm hopeful that we are getting the second or third iteration of that plan and not the first one.
Yeah. John, one of the things that this plan would do was get rid of all of these regional economic development partnerships that were created several years ago to try to help stimulate growth, particularly in the rural areas of our state. In their place, she's going to have the governor is going to have 8 prosperity zones. Are we trading better here, getting rid of one?
Well, it's a sunnier sounding name, a prosperity zone, not a regional partnership.
Well, most people don't believe those regional partnerships were all that effective.
Well, you know,
in some cases they were.
I know some of the people in those partnerships. They're good people. Some of them are experienced in economic development, but you hear lots of the confusion, the inevitable competition. You know, we're going to bring everybody together in, let's say, the Research Triangle area or the Mountain West or whatever. Well, actually, the cities and counties still compete with each other, and they're still, you know, elbowing each other. The proof's in the pudding. Since we started those partnerships in the 90s, that's about when our economy started to fall behind the national average. We've been growing slower than the national average in real per capita GDP since the mid-1990s. That's where our slide started, and that's when these. Now, I'm not saying it was caused by the regional partnerships, but that kind of approach is obviously not working.
Peg, last question on this. A lot of people have concerns about eliminating the Rural Center and the NC Biotechnology Center, folding them into commerce. Is this a good idea or not?
Well, you know, I think the sad thing is those are two of the best things that we've done in North Carolina, the Rural Center and the Biotech Center, Technology Center. So I hate that those two things that actually do work are going to be tossed out with some things that may or may not be as successful as they could be just because somebody wants to do something new.
All right, after these messages, we're going to talk about the Senate race in 2014.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Tax reform. It's a popular phrase around Raleigh. But watch out, because middle-class families will pay more. The Senate plan creates over 170 new taxes that will increase prices on all goods and services. It even taxes medicine and Social Security benefits. And it eliminates the home mortgage interest and property tax deductions, reducing home values and hurting the economy. Tax reform should not make middle-class families pay more.
You trust your family physician to care for you and your family. We treasure that trust and are committed to providing the best care possible for all North Carolinians. It's time for Medicaid reform, but not without input from North Carolina's family physicians. Medicaid reform will impact health care for all of us. Tell state leaders you want your physician involved. We need Medicaid reform that's good for North Carolina. To sign our petition of support, visit rnchealthcare.com.
Where do you go when you need to know? ANC makes it easy for you to get the information you need to make well-informed public policy decisions. Our members are industry leaders who are ready to share their industry-specific insights with you. Want to hear both sides of the story? ANC members can tell you. Just use the ANC member directory as your guide or call us directly. ANC members have the knowledge, expertise, and perspective you need to create public policies that are good for North Carolina. We are ready for your call.
Raffaldini Vineyards is Chianti in the Carolinas. Enjoy Italian-style wines, breathtaking views, cultural events, and much more. Visit raffaldini.com.
We're 15 months away from the Senate election in November 2014, and already we're getting announced candidacies. Now, we assume Senator Kay Hagan's going to run for re-election. Last week, House Speaker Tom Tillis announced that he's going to run. Dan Blue, why so early the announcement? Is he trying to preclude others from getting into the race?
He's doing three simple things. Now the attention will be focused on him, the money will be focused on him, and anyone that wants to be taken seriously has to get in now and run the entire distance.
All right. Other Republicans are saying this is a must-win if they're going to recapture the U.S. Senate. Any other prominent names?
Well, there is Greg Brannon is already in the race. He's
right.
in position. But other than people with political experience, perhaps Renee Elmers. But there's probably not a whole lot of other Republicans actually looking at this race right now.
Don't forget Senator Phil Berger. That could make it really interesting if he jumps in with Speaker Tillis.
And we'll
that'll
talk
make
about
legislative politics very complicated.
We'll talk about this obviously throughout the year. You've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read our column. Visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And we hope you'll join us next week when we'll take on more issues of interest to the people of North Carolina. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.